Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Werewolf Week here in the month of October. Today we are talking about 1961's Curse of the Werewolf. Curse of the Werewolf. That's not that difficult to say. I just can't speak. This is the Hammer version of the werewolf story from Britain. And I'm recording these out of order, so I forget what number this is going to come out. But at this point, this is my third time watching the Universal version, and then immediately after watching the Hammer version. And in both of the previous ones that I've watched, I enjoyed the Hammer one better. This one breaks that trend. This movie I thought was very boring. And there's one big negative that I'm going to get to towards the end of my notes, but it's boring. I'm going to get to it later. There's basically 3 different stories that technically are connected, but you don't need to see all of them, and it would have been much more interesting of a movie to just focus on the latter one. But let's get into my notes. My first note, Q! I don't know how to pronounce the actor's name, but the actor that played Q in many of the James Bond films is very briefly in this movie. He is the only person in the entire movie that I recognized. So, there you go. So, the first story, the first movie of the 3 movies in this movie, we're following this beggar who wanders into a town. He's got no food, he's got no money. He's looking for some food and or money. And he goes into this tavern and people tell him that I think the Marquez, I don't know. This movie takes place in Spain. There's a bunch of words I don't know. But basically, the lord of that area is getting married that day. They're all very upset about it because the guy's a jerk. So they sarcastically tell this beggar to go to the castle, whatever, the manor, and see if he's got any charity. And they're like, not serious about it, but this beggar doesn't have anything else to do, so he goes there. And he gets, like, ridiculed by this guy, the lord or whatever. So he comes in, he's begging for, like, just a piece of bread. They're having this huge feast for the wedding, and he asks for a piece of bread. And, I mean, you hear about this stuff. I guess I've never watched it in a movie before, but the lord guy is just the worst. Like, absolutely, he's like, at one point he makes him dance for food, and then when he gives him the food, he like throws it on the floor, and all these other rich jerks are all laughing at him. And I just wrote down, I'm uncomfortable. And like, that's the point of the scene, so it's not like they did a bad job conveying that, but it didn't really lead to anything. So I don't think it needed to be in there. And I'm just like, you want to start your movie off making me feel uncomfortable? Like, I get it's a horror movie. I'm supposed to feel scared, but I just feel bad for this person. So that was kind of a sour note to start the movie on. And they end up just throwing him in the dungeon. So, like, you could have just had him knock on the door and they just take him and throw him in the dungeon. So none of that stuff mattered. There's a bit where the dude's wife that he's marrying, who is not into him, takes pity on this guy, and she's the reason he gets food and stuff. So you think that, like, he's going to get some kind of friendship or something with her, but nope, he's just forgotten by everybody in the dungeon. So then there's this jailer and the jailer's daughter are the only ones that he ever sees, because everyone else has forgotten about him. And then there's a time jump for no reason, and the jailer has now died, and the jailer's daughter is now older, and she is a mute. I don't know if they specify that she can't speak or that she doesn't speak. They say she can't speak, but I don't know if it's legitimately that she can't or that just that she doesn't. But one way or the other, she doesn't speak. The Lord, who's now very old and like decrepit, and his wife has died, and his face looks like a monster. Like, it's got heavy prosthetics, but the rest of his hands and everything look fine, so that was kind of weird. But he makes advances on this woman who runs away. And so he's basically like, throw her in the dungeon until she's gonna, do what I want her to do. And then while she's in the dungeon, she, the only person who has interacted with the beggar that's in there, the only person that has shown him any kindness, that's been giving him food this whole time, what does he do? Immediately, he assaults her and has his way with her. And I don't know why all these movies, I say all these movies, again, I'm releasing the videos out of order of what I'm watching, but I've watched several movies in a row now where the main character is just a horrible person. And to be fair, this guy doesn't end up being the main character, and I wrote down at one point, why are we following a beggar? Because he's not a werewolf. So it's very strange that we're following him. But even if it's a given that we're following him, he's just... So then it's like, I don't really feel as bad for you as I did before. Because the moment you get a chance to violate somebody else, you do. That is the first thing you do, and you have absolutely no problems with it. And then he, dies after. Maybe she killed him, I don't know. But he is done. That's it. That's all that he does in the story, is he gets this woman pregnant. So she wants to get out of the cell. So they're like, oh, you've changed your mind, have you? Ha ha ha. They take her out of the cell, bring her back up to the Lord, who's like, oh, you've changed your mind. All right. And she kills him and runs away. So this is I want to say almost half an hour of screen time. This movie's an hour and a half long. It's almost half an hour of screen time that this much takes place. And none of these characters matter moving forward. So that's why I say it's like 3 movies. It's like 3 stories. And they are technically connected, but it doesn't matter. We didn't need to see all this. We didn't need to know all this. So this I forget what her name is, but this girl runs away. We had the time jump, but she could have just already been an adult. She could have just been the jailer. We didn't need to have time pass. It almost would have made more sense for him to act the way that he did if he didn't have years and years and years and years and years of a bond built up with this woman. If she was just some woman. Not that that would have made it okay, but it would have made slightly more sense from his perspective. Anyway, so she runs away. She gets found by a guy who is the father of the main character in this movie. Well, not really. The adopted father. So he takes her in. And this guy, I forget his name. He's got... Alfredo is his name. I know, because the credits are still up on my screen, which I'm looking at. So, Alfredo takes this girl in, and his servant, whose name is Teresa, she tends to her, right? And she informs Alfredo that she's pregnant, right? She's going to have a baby. And so in this movie, which I guess was a thing in folklore, I had never heard of this before, but in some versions of werewolf folklore, you don't become a werewolf by being bitten. You become a werewolf by being born on December 25th. Because that is a sin, because you're competing with Jesus, even though that's not really Jesus' birthday. And so being born on December 25th is what turns you into a werewolf. Never heard that before, but it apparently was a thing. So that's how this movie gets its werewolves. So, again, we're now in the second story. But all that stuff from the first one about this beggar, right? None of that matters. It doesn't matter how she got pregnant. It doesn't matter who got her pregnant, right? The fact that she's giving birth on December 25th, that's all that matters. None of the rest of that stuff matters. And so, again, I was reading the trivia because I was very bored. Apparently, at one point, the beggar was also going to be a werewolf. And you see scenes of him where he's got heavy hair and fur over his arms, which I thought was weird, given that he wasn't a werewolf. But apparently, at one point in the script, he was a werewolf. But the censors said, you can have assault, or you can have a werewolf. But you can't have a werewolf committing that specific type of assault. Who knows why they make the restrictions that they do. And I'm trying to avoid certain terms here. So they took that element away, but clearly it wasn't important to the story that he was a werewolf, because it's just the fact that he was born on December 25th. So why do we need him at all? I don't know. If he would have been a werewolf, that would have made no difference to the plot of the movie. Very strange choice. I'm not even looking at my notes here. Okay. At one point I just wrote everyone's the worst except Teresa. Teresa's the servant that works for Alfredo that tends to the servant girl, and then later on basically raises Leon is the child's name, and she's the one that, takes care of him. This movie gives us the lore about the full moon being an important element. It's not that werewolves only change during the full moon. It's that they especially are at danger of changing during the full moon. During the full moon cycle, when evil is at its strongest, is what the movie says. So, the 1941 Universal Wolfman film does not feature full moon lore of any kind. I know at some point they do, because in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which features the Wolfman, the full moon is a big part of that movie. So this certainly isn't original to this movie, but of the ones that I'm watching, this is the first one that has full moon as part of its lore, even though it's not the whole bit there. And then we also have the affliction to silver, which was featured in the 1941 version. But here we actually get a silver bullet being used to kill, among other creatures, the werewolf at the end of the movie. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that while the beggar is in prison, we have an unnecessary time jump, because the girl could have just been a woman. We didn't have to meet her as a girl and then see her as a woman. We see one scene of her as a girl, and it literally dissolves into her being a woman. So that's one time jump. Then, after Leon is born, we get another time jump, but we're not told there's a time jump, and there's nothing on screen. There's even a narrator in this movie, and he doesn't mention a time jump. And so we see other things happening, and we hear people talking about this boy named Leon, who we aren't told is that child. And then we see Teresa interacting with this boy named Leon. And I had to rewind it to see if there was something I missed. And there wasn't something I missed, but there's another time jump of 8 to 10 years that it just didn't mention or make clear. I mean, I guess they made it clear enough because I figured it out the second time I was watching it. But it was very confusing because I'm like, who's this other boy? Where did he come from? And you start seeing evidence of werewolf attacks, and I'm like, is this an infant werewolf? Is there a baby werewolf out doing stuff that turns into a baby? And it's a child. We just were not informed that the movie was jumping forward a decade. So I wrote down, was there a time jump? Yes, there was. And then another point, I just wrote, this child is not a good actor. I don't like to pick on kid actors, but this movie did not need to feature a child. So this second half of the story features this child, Leon, who is a werewolf and doesn't really know that or what that means and has to come to terms with that. And so, he doesn't have a ton of lines, but the ones he do, it's supposed to be heavy and resonant, and, you're supposed to feel for this kid. And, the kid's not a great actor, and, it's not his fault, but, if you're writing a movie and you're going to put the middle big turning point of your movie on the shoulders of a child, pick a child that can act, moving on. And then we get to the third story. So I literally wrote in my notes 3 stories in one, because then we time jump again to where Leon is an adult, but I think we're told this time that we move forward in time. So he's going off to get his own job away from home. So jailer girl becomes a woman. Leon becomes a preteen. and then Leon becomes an adult. We have 3 separate time jumps in this movie for absolutely no reason. So at some point, Alfredo, the adoptive father, is talking with the priest in town about what to do about the fact that, oh, my son's a werewolf. And basically he says the only cure is love. The werewolf curse is this duality of man, good versus evil, wolf spirit that was able to enter the soul of a living body because he was born on December 25th, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the only way to keep that at bay is to love that child. That is the cure. You must love the child. And that's pretty much all we're told. So we jump forward. He's an adult, and he goes away from home. And apparently, loving someone only works if you're in the same location as them. Because pretty soon, werewolf stuff starts happening again. And, like, he's still in the same town. Right? He, like, moved out to the place that he worked at. But he walked there. And at one night during his werewolfings, he walked back home. And then the next morning, walked back. So, like, it's in the same town. Or at least around the same town. But apparently that's too far for the love to affect him. So he starts werewolfing out again. Oh, I wrote a note that says, oh look, a girl cheating on her fiancé with the protagonist. Because if you watch my video for the 1941 version, that happens there too. And I don't want to say that at the time that this story takes place, women should have been absolutely in love with their betrothed, that they didn't have a choice in who that was. I get that that was bad, and times are better now, but still, a character cheating on their fiancé is not a character that I'm going to feel sympathetic towards, and the fact that she's engaged to this other guy does not matter to the plot. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't push the story forward. It never becomes an obstacle that anyone has to overcome. Literally, all that happens with it is Leon wants to go away with her, and she's like, oh no, I can't. And then later on, Leon wants to go away with her, and she's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But that could have just as much just been about, oh, I don't want to leave without my father's permission, and you're, a guy that is not as well off as my family is, so he wouldn't approve of you. The fact that she has a fiancé makes no difference in the case. We're told that her dad likes the fiancé, but that doesn't need to be there. It's not a necessity. So you're just adding in this cheating woman for no reason. Then later on, Leon goes out to party with his friend and starts to get werewolfy, and right before that, he starts macking on this girl, so it's like, both of them are cheating. I don't know. I guess people, I don't know. I mean, I know it's an old movie, it's from 1961, but come on. Both of your protagonists are cheating on their supposed love interests. Those are not the people I root for. I'm sorry. And especially when it's not necessary. Like, if you're going to make it necessary, maybe that can work. But you're just putting stuff in. Just to put stuff in. I don't get it. Okay. Then I wrote my note, so love only works in the same room. Because he werewolves that. So it's implied that they've been having a secret relationship for a while. So it's like, her love is what's keeping him at bay. And when he finally werewolves out again, it's when he's out partying at this pub outside of town. So that was when I was like, so literally they have to be in the same location for the love to work. But I've already talked about that. So, biggest problem, I think, with this movie. This movie is an hour and 32 minutes long. The first time we see the werewolf is an hour and 24 minutes in. 8 minutes remaining in the movie. And about a minute of that is closing credits. So we get about 7 minutes of movie with a werewolf in it. Half an hour is taken up with this nonsense story about a beggar that is not important. Half an hour is taken up with this not great child actor trying to showcase the torment of finding out that he's a werewolf. Not necessary. This story could have picked up with Leon starting work at this vineyard that he goes to. We've already got narration in this movie, so we can just have narration tell us about the curse of being born on December 25th, that Leon had this, but he has been able to put off the curse because he has had the love of his parents, and now he's going away from home, so who knows what's going to happen, right? And then we can see his relationship with his love interest, whose name I don't remember. We can give them more to do, and it won't just be this, she's got a fiance, but she loves him instead, for no reason. We see no reason why she would have any feelings for him at all. It's just a thing that she has, because the story says that she has it, so we could build that up more. We could build up his relationship with his coworker / friend that he ends up murdering once he werewolves out. That doesn't really have much of an impact on us, because we've barely seen the guy. And then my last note is just, a werewolf does parkour while people watch. Because those 7 minutes of werewolf action are mostly the werewolf walking around on rooftops and very clumsily, like, pulling himself up to different heights of rooftop while the bunch of people on the ground watch. One guy throws a torch, which catches a bale of hay that's on a roof for some reason, catches that on fire, and the wolfman throws it back down. And that's about all the interaction that the people have with the werewolf. At one point, the werewolf jumps into the street. It's an empty part of the street that no people are at for some reason, even though they're all gathered around to watch him. And then he immediately proceeds to climb back up to the roof of another building. It's very strange. So nothing really happens. And then his father... at one point he got arrested because his clothes were found at the murder of his friend, because he took his clothes off when he transformed. So he's in jail, and his father comes to see him, and he's like, you got to kill me, because I'm just going to keep doing this. It's not safe. Go get the silver bullet that guy used when I was a kid, and kill me. And so that's what the father does. Movie ends with the father shooting him in the heart with a silver bullet. He dies. Credits. So, if you got rid of those first two stories, you start this movie with adult Leon. We are told what has happened. I know. The saying is, show, don't tell. But when the stuff you show us doesn't really matter and is not very interesting to watch, I don't really need to take up 2/3 of the movie for you to show that to me. I'm fine if you want to tell me that. I would rather see, in a movie called The Curse of the Werewolf, I would rather see a werewolf. Maybe that's just me. Technically, a lot of this movie is about the curse, but I want to see the werewolf for more than 7 minutes of an 1.5-hour movie. I did not enjoy this movie. I thought it was boring. I thought it showed too much of the stuff I didn't care about, not enough of the stuff that I wanted to see. And when it did show me the stuff I wanted to see, it was mainly him running around on rooftops, doing nothing. Like, we don't even see him. There's, like, different parts where we hear that the werewolf has attacked, not crops, cattle, goats, and things like that. We don't see any of that. And other than a couple shots of his hairy arm attacking some people at that pub, we don't really see him attack any people either. So we mainly see a werewolf run around on the roof. I'm going to stop talking about this movie now because I didn't like it. So those are my thoughts on The Curse of the Werewolf from 1961. Let me know what your thoughts are if you have any, but that's all that I have to say. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Hey everybody, Sam Tom here. Just wanted to let you know that I have 2 channels. If you're watching my music content, I also have a movie channel where I talk about movies and TV shows. If you're watching my movie content, I have a music channel where I do song covers, instrument demos, things like that. So feel free to check that out. Obviously, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.